let's jump into it. I'm sure more people would join as we go, but I'm sure people want to have some lunch as well, so I don't want to take up the full hour. So yes, welcome everyone to our latest PRCA Tech Group panel. My name's Will. I'm the co-chair of the Tech Group, and I'll be taking us through the discussion today. Teeny bit of housekeeping up top. Today's panel is one of a series of events we run as a tech group. If you'd like to get involved, you have speaker suggestions or topics, just drop me a line on LinkedIn. I'm always keen to hear from people. But anyway, on to today's topic, all focused on AI. Apparently it's a big thing. I don't know. I don't believe it's controversial to say that it's probably the topic that's dominating our agenda at the moment. The FT reported not too long ago that there's over 2,000 headlines a day containing AI as a theme or topic within them. So, and really its impact on the PR industry really holds many unknowns still. So with that in mind, and the theme of our discussion today is really looking through two lenses. So what does this all mean from a measurement and impact perspective? PR has forever had a challenge with demonstrating its value and ROI. So we're going to look at that in an AI world. And secondly, what does this all mean for humans and people driving the industry forwards? Our industry is driven by creativity, relationships. What does that all mean in this new world? And we promise as we go through it, and I'm going to keep the guys to this, we said we'd include practical, tangible examples. We won't have too much fluff in there. We won't go too high level. There's a lot of those conversations going on already. We'll make sure we're digging into actual examples that's hopefully helpful for you going forwards. So we'll spend about 40 minutes having a discussion, allowing a bit of time at the end for Q&A. If you have any questions as we go, please drop them into the chat or the Q&A function, and we'll come back to those at the end. Anyway, on to the panel then, and I'm really delighted with who we've brought together here. I think it's a bit of an Avengers cast of AI perspectives. We've got in-house, we've got agency, we've got journalists perspectives, and I think it should mean we have a great discussion today. So without further ado, I'll let all the panelists introduce themselves and give us a very inclination to begin with around how they're using AI within their day-to-day. Let's go alphabetical. I will start with you, Erica, and then we'll go Mofe, Harriet, and then Tom.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you, Will, for having me here today. I'm Erica Faltous. I lead our EMEA communications at ServiceNow, which is an AI platform company. So AI is certainly top of mind for all that we do. I mean, in terms of how I'm using AI every day, I think I'm learning every day how to use AI. This is a continuous journey. I think the use cases for AI are only just starting to be discovered. But I will say it is my companion in brainstorming. It's my companion in analysis. It's my companion in first drafts. So, I'm continually trying to find the uses I can have for AI as well.
So yeah, my name is Eyimofe. I work in B2B tech PR at the Hoffman agency. Quite similar really to Erica in terms of how I use AI. I think for me, one of the main things is research and measurements. So how do I not necessarily speed up research, but make it easier really? And how do I do that with references as well, making sure that it's not sort of like business research, but how do I use that as well in measurement and sort of as a companion, so to say, or more. I find myself having to argue with AI quite a lot, right? So it's sort of serves that function for me. And yeah, of course, I will talk about that in a bit when we get more into the discussions.
Hi, I'm Harriet Meyer. I'm a journalist turned AI and trainer and consultant. So I've spent 20 years as an award-winning financial journalist for publications like the Daily Telegraph, The Guardian, The Sunday Times, and I founded AI for media a while back now, with the aim of helping comms and media professionals thrive in the age of AI without kind of losing editorial standards and their integrity in the process. So I run hands-on PR and comms training for in-house and editorial teams. And in terms of, the way I use AI is very much from kind of the idea and through to kind of brief research, editing, and the final publication. So it's really slotting AI into the different parts of the process. Stuff like it's a phenomenal research tool. Like I'm big fan of Perplexity, Notebook LM, ChatGPT is kind of like my daily workhorse, but also Claude. So all for different, they have their different strengths and weaknesses, but yeah, I use them like digging into data. And I feel like there's a real lack of knowledge as to how AI can really help to streamline workflows, but also enhance what we're capable of.
Nice. I'll dig into that much more.
Yeah, we definitely will. I'm Tom, so I founded MVPR. I've been in agency comms mainly just over a decade, but we created MVPR to be a PR agency, but we built our own operating system for comms underneath that. And so we have the team that provides the expertise, and then the software makes everything a lot faster. And obviously over the last 2.5 years, we've added an agentic system on top of the operating system, which is able to, in many ways, act in the same way that we act. And so it's, the protocol for operations is very much written by us. And so I guess we use AI all the time sometimes for really, really simple things. Yes, for research occasionally, but more often for doing things like making assessments on whether or not to pitch something or not pitch something, or we sometimes use AI to analyze a task and work out whether it can take on the first draft of a task or the first version of a task. So we're using, I guess, AI built on top of just a normal software and data platform.
And I think we're starting to dig into this already, and I'd like to kick off on an optimistic note, as there's much doom and gloom around AI. But digging into what, from each of your perspectives, what do you see as a positive that AI can drive change-wise in terms of how we deliver PR on a day-to-day basis? I'll start with you, Mofe, on that one.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, right? It's basically, as you've said, we see a lot of talk on AI, so from the negative perspective, and I think one in a way where AI can definitely be used to dull the mind, as people say, the sort of overuse of AI, we can also use it to sharpen the mind a bit. And just going back to what I said in my intro around arguing with the AI, it basically revolves around, for instance, if I have an idea that I think is a good idea but might have some holes in it, and I say that to the AI, okay, what do you think about this? And with certain parameters to say, okay, what do you think about this based on X, Y, Z? And it comes to me saying, okay, yeah, actually where the holes are. And then I go back to saying, oh, actually, this is what I think about this. And then, so we have that conversation, right? So it's not really AI doing the work, but instead you're able to have a conversation about the work, and the work even better before you even pass it for reviews and all of that. So if someone says, oh, have you tried doing this? Yes, actually, I have, and this is why it doesn't work, or this is why it does work, and you're able to have those kind of conversations, right? So in terms of turning a tool that can sort of like a disadvantage to an advantage. So I'm also quite focused on the quality of work. I think a lot of times people talk about AI in terms of like time savings. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I'm less big on scale and on depth. What I want to focus on is the quality of AI. I could do a 1 hour task in 5 minutes, but how good is it really? Should I be aiming for quality, or should I be aiming for speed? I think for me, one of the things that AI can help is to make the work better by basically the examples that I've given as well. And I think accessibility is also one. in the sense that one of the issues that we have currently with PR comms is people don't really know what it is really. I think, frankly, even people that start PR or comms find themselves. I know, for instance, when I was in uni and coming into work, I'm like, okay, right. So I get the idea, but I think this is a little bit different to what I was expecting, right? So in terms of maybe using that as a tool to explain to people what's sort of like mirror sort of like the day to day of what they could actually expect, that would be helpful. And the last one that I was thinking about in terms of prediction, like, are we able to get to a place where we can have sort of like close to accurate forecast of things that can happen? So we're not necessarily exactly, but sort of like ideas. For instance, could we be able to predict all of the possible prices that could happen and put them in brackets? So not necessarily predicting every single one, but having brackets to say, oh, if this type of crisis happens, how do we respond to that so we're not sort of like stuck in a, or we're not sort of behind time or caught off guard, right? So how do we sort of like plan for all of those things? Yeah, so that's sort of like the positive ways I'm thinking about AI currently.
Pretty interesting. Feels like scenario planning could certainly be one way, and I saw you nodding along to that, Erica. Is that something is that one of the ways you're bringing it through in terms of your applications of AI at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a broad range. And so scenario planning kind of looks at one of the bigger, more strategic areas you can look at, going to the AI, helping you to understand like what are the different legs that can come out, in those different scenarios. It can act as a sparring partner for you in terms of how you plan through all of that as well. And I think though we can't forget the simple, repetitive pieces that can really free up our time. And I know Mofi's not thinking about it necessarily in that way, and some people aren't. But a really simple example I had was, I was trying to understand with my team spread across EMEA, when is everybody going to be on PTO? When are they going to be on their bank holidays? Because I don't want to reach them on their bank holidays. So I asked Gemini to pull the lists of all the different bank holidays. They gave that to me for all the cities my team was in and then added it into my calendar right away. And I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to track it anywhere. It was a 3-minute process that removed a huge amount of lift from what I would usually have to do. And so I think there's the range of the repetitive that we need to think about taking advantage, the administrative as part of it, so that we can free up time. And then also use it for those first drafts, the brainstorming, the scenario planning, the template building, so that we can then spend more of our time on the strategic analysis that sits underneath it, or on top of it as well.
Really interesting. And is that, from your perspective, Harriet, looking through driving people change and ways people can be skilled up? How are there some key examples coming to mind for you on this?
Yeah, definitely. It's about sort of clearing the work so that you can use for space for your brain to analyze data. For example, I mean, some recent examples from my work is, I was helping a PR agency last week to they've already got sort of a structure of a campaign. It's really about amplifying what they've already got in lots of the one asset into lots of different types of assets, because AI is multimodal and the vast ranges of its capabilities mean you can really take one piece of content and use it for many different purposes. And also things like, enormous spreadsheets of data, using AI in a particular way to build tools that can analyze that data, which was being done by humans, and pick out kind of accurately, like there's a way to use AI to get the accurate data analysis to be able to find kind of top line news stories, those sorts of things. And yeah, building like little agents to streamline repetitive tasks, or it could be repetitive tasks, or it could be just brainstorming, or it could be a devil's advocate, something that picks holes or in your biases or in your work, and therefore I just feel like it's, in that way it's working as a thought partner. So those are some recent examples, and it's really just can help it's just thinking about, well, what could AI bring to the table for this particular PR task? And I've always, and even things like, I've found that teams have been kind of blown away when you see how tools like Perplexity can help you really find and get the contact details for and even the agents representing like influencers and journalists and all sorts of things that people are completely unaware of.
Really interesting. You started to talk a little bit about the application of building agents, and that feels very, I mean, this question feels a slightly interesting one for you, Tom, given sort of the whole business is built on it to an extent. But what are some examples about how you'll bring it to life?
So I think we're big on digital twins right now. So creating digital twins for like Mofe talked about it a little bit, like you have like a crisis comms digital twin, which is your kind of like corporate messaging, watch out, stuff like that, that you can pass every single piece of content that leaves the company through this digital twin, because you can make it accessible by anyone in the company, right? So and you can bounce it off and be like, oh, this hits this kind of score, should we send it or not? And then you can decide whether or not to send it to a head of comms for approval. But you can also do that also with other kinds of things. So if you've got a product department that's constantly shipping products and they're constantly asking you to do product announcements for those things, why not create like a little analysis, which is like, is this newsworthy or not? And then your product team can run it past, that is this newsworthy or not? You don't have to tell them that this is, not an announcement. This is like a newsletter. And then they can see that for themselves. And then they can be like, oh, we should do this in a newsletter. And so like, even just those small things by creating that kind of like an evaluator that anybody in your entire organization can use, you free up a bunch of time for yourself. But also you help educate the entire org on what makes really good communications and maybe how you can adjust information that you have. And so that helps extract more information out of companies, because companies are generating really interesting information all the time. It's just how can you extract it? And I think creating those kinds of like little representations of yourself can do that really well. And then, I mean, I think broadly speaking, it's about elevating what you do. There's no reason why you need to spend hours and hours putting together a coverage book anymore, because it should just be done in a couple of seconds. And ideally that would be done with software already, but it isn't. Or sometimes it is, but not in the kind of comprehensive way you need, or maybe not in the nuanced way that you need to present to a board. But taking that kind of information and then turning it into something that is applicable using a persona or something else, totally possible. And so I think, everyone's kind of covered it, but it frees you up to do the thinking behind, okay, what do we want the messaging for this to be? Do we want nuanced messaging here and here? And then have everything almost executed by machines with humans in the loop. It just gets a lot faster and a lot more personalized.
And what you've all been circling, which we'll obviously start to dig into a bit more now, is the delivering greater impact, I guess, in our comms. And for that, I'm keen to look for a couple of different lenses in terms of stakeholders on this. Keen to get your perspective, Harriet, a bit more with your journalist hat on, in terms of how does AI change the PR journalist relationship from your perspective? Or does it?
I've been writing a lot in my newsletter recently about all the fake AI experts, and I think there's a trust issue at the moment, and a trust issue for PR and journalism, just generally media. It hasn't, AI hasn't killed relationships, but it really has killed lazy pitching. I think journalists' beady eyes are out for anything that looks like AI written fluff. I mean, we've even got I've got WhatsApp groups of journalists saying, "Oh, do you think this was sent by an AI bot?" And it's really about it's putting the personalization into those. So you have to, I think, you can use, certainly AI is phenomenal for speeding up the press release process and distribution and tailoring it to certain journalists, but actually putting the personal angle in there and is more important than ever, and building those relationships. And I've kind of been shouting a bit about the importance of a PR, more of a community in media, and bringing PR and journalism back together. When I started as a journalist, which was quite a long time ago now, it was very much about meeting in person and developing those relationships. And I've still got those relationships with those PRs, 20 years later. So, and those are still the people I go to for specific stories. So it's really that, but I feel like that's been lost in the sort of, the journalism era of the rise of online journalism. So yeah, I think it's really that, just to be aware that journalists are pretty suspicious now of every press release.
Very interesting. So, from your perspective, the it's in the name of public relations, but the relationships matter more than ever in terms of
Yeah, for sure.
building those.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, it's going to be, I think it's harder than ever, which is sad for new names to break into the industry. And that includes journalism and, journalists and PRs. But I really think it's about relationships it's sort of back to the old school skills, really. And yeah, I'm hopeful that I mean, in a way, I feel like that's a positive that, we can build those back up again, maybe. But there needs to be more in-person events. And I think, I'd love to see some sort of community where bringing PRs and journalists together for those kind of setups so that that can be established.
Nice. That's I think you're totally right. And I could go much more down the rabbit warren of everything that's going on in the media world, but that's not really the focus of today, is it? In terms of stakeholders, Erica, I wanted to come to you, flipping this from an internal stakeholder and how you manage all of those, which I feel probably particularly unique for you because you're in an organization which is really at the forefront of embracing AI. And I'd imagine that comes with some expectations that PR should just embrace it all itself. So, yeah, how are you managing those expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'll talk about it in three levels. One, as you say, ServiceNow is an AI platform company. We've really positioned ourselves at the forefront of this AI revolution, and that means that as a company, as a whole, our teams need to be embracing AI, regardless of what role you have. If we believe that every one of our customers can be transformed by it, then certainly we need to be customer zero and all of that. And so internally, we run programs like AI learning days. We've done AI assessments of every employee, not as a threat, not as a you must be at this level, but to understand how we can support their learning journey in AI. We've, on our homepage, we've embedded the LLMs so that people can access the different AI tools, Now Assist, our own AI tool inclusive. As part of that, then you go into the comms team level. We're engaging, our IT team support to build out different projects. We're all learning and have, access to like Copilot Studio, et cetera, in order to kick off our own projects and start thinking about how we build our own agents. And I think we're very much on that learning curve of how are we going to use all these tools as well. So from the repetitive tasks, monitoring and analysis, engaging different tools we can use, be it for, creative asset development, content development, brainstorming, et cetera, as part of it. And then when you get to our agency, I think that there actually probably is very much an expectation that our agencies are thinking, one, about how to employ and use AI in the work they're doing for us, and then two, how can they be the leaders in AI tool development themselves? So Tom spoke about digital twins. Great example. Can we use our messaging or can we use our assets? Can our agencies find ways to innovate with AI to bring us solutions for things like digital twin content development as well? So turning to our agencies to help us find that as well with that outside in perspective too. Across the board, the hope is it creates the room for relationships so that, because I do think, and I love what Harriet was saying, the email pitch on its own has become so impersonal. I've been in PR long enough that it used to be about the picking up the phone and going, to the lunches with journalists and such. And actually, maybe we're going to see more of the return to that. It never disappeared, but leaning more heavily on that instead of sending an email that's in a form email to the other and say, well, we didn't hear back, right? So I think relationships will all of this should be in service of creating the room for relationships. And then across the board of all of it, I do have to say, like, there's two principles that cannot disappear. And one is the principle of transparency. How much is AI being used in the work that we're doing? There's a massive question that I think is ahead for agencies of what becomes the billing structure when we're more efficient with AI. And I could go for a while on that, and we can use without answers about that, but transparency around that. I think just this week, there was the story about Deloitte doing a report in Australia for government and having to refund the cost of that because it was all AI. They didn't disclose. So that has to sit as part of it. And the second is human in the loop. has to remain core to what is being built. Nothing AI builds can be a final draft. It's to supplement the work of human. It's not to replace the work of the human, again, because of those relationships, but also because the individual will always have a better understanding of the context. And so, the joke is, did you get a pitch with an M dash now, right? Because the M dash is the grammar of AI. But, different versions of that. Is it obvious that AI has created this, or does this still have the human touch as part of it? I think that's an important thing that we can't lose.
Really interesting.
I have a quick question. How is your agency? Sorry, Will, to cut across you. Are you working with your agent? Have they moved to output-based billing rather than hourly-based billing? Because how easy has it been to work with them? Because that's the friction point, right? Is, well, okay, are you going to be like 4 or 5 times faster, or are you going to reduce the number of hours you're going to work, knowing what we all know about how quickly you can create content, for example?
Yeah, I mean, dangerous for me as the client to be bringing this up in this conversation, but I haven't seen billing structures change, and actually, Tom, seeing some of what your team is doing raises that exact question for me. Is there a shift that we're going to see of output-based billing structures? We've never really seen that as much in the PR industry in the past, more so in different creative agencies. It would be more likely in those spaces, I think. Not yet. I wonder if it's something that we'll start to see.
Do you see that's where it's going, Tom, from your perspective? I know you have the business models you have in place.
I think it depends. I mean, yes, that's our business model, but I think it's the logical thing to do if you're an agency and people know that you're using AI, then if you're using AI correctly, then it should save you time doing the things you're currently doing. And so that just creates a really difficult discussion to have with the people that you're working alongside, because the quality of the output is still there, right? It's still the same. So it's really a conversation with your client about what's the value proposition and the value exchange that they're willing to pay for versus you're willing to deliver. And can be a can of worms, because then it raises the discussion, which is, do we do this? Is it more cost effective for us to do this in-house, or is this more cost effective for us to do with our agency? And like, where does the expertise, like, do we need internally lift, and the expertise that actually is really valuable to still have externally? Because the premise of an agency or consulting company anyway is they bring external expertise for you that you don't then have to pay for and train and nurture in-house. So personally, I think that it's inevitable, because the only way to do things like work out how to retrain your internal staff at an agency is to know that you're going to make a certain amount of margin on the services that you're providing to your clients, so that you can reinvest that in junior staff. And if you're having an argument with your client about, okay, well, this piece of content used to take us 2.5 hours to draft, and now it takes us 10 minutes to draft, and the client says, well, actually, we're really willing to pay you 10 minutes for an hour, not 2.5 hours anymore, and I don't need a junior to do the initial draft to be checked by a senior and then check. And so those funds are not traveling into agencies. And so, but actually the discussion to have is, well, what's it worth to you? Is a client ready draft worth X amount? And if it is, then any incremental gain the agency makes on improving how quickly or the quality or all of those kinds of processes, so that actually you can create the output faster to the same level of quality, you keep the margin on it. And then you're having a value exchange discussion with your client directly. There are some things that it doesn't make sense to have an output, based billing model attached to, like, things like, I mean, potentially like creative ideas, like large scale, like campaign creative ideas. It's very difficult to judge in advance the complexities of a process that's about a massive campaign that's some fantastical idea. The creation of things like content, we know that it's much faster to do that, and so you can make an assessment. This is probably going to be 4 or 5 times less time that we're going to need to actually do this part of it. So I think it depends, but it's just going to come down to a conversation that you have with your client. But ultimately, people in Erica's position are going to be setting the value that they store in those things, and then you can adapt afterwards.
Yeah, and I think, like, there's probably, as I think out loud, some version of hybrid that we end up moving to, because the value of the agency support I have extends beyond, can they write the press release? That's just one moment and one output piece. But the consultation, the again, that expertise that comes from the experience, the relationships that the agency has, with the media and as part of that outreach, all of that, factors into the equations. The AI can't be the start and the end of it. And it goes back to there is probably a billing structure that allows for that human in the loop layer because I equally don't want work that doesn't have that. And then there's a whole skills question of what happens with the junior layer as well. But, I suspect hybrid is probably a bit of an evolution that we'll see and what we're starting to see it in other industries as well.
Yeah, and I think we've got the interesting dynamic going on here too that we won't go into, but the media world is changing in itself, right? So there's a lot of change there in terms of where audiences are going to actually find their content, and I think that actually offers a huge opportunity for PR to try to diversify the channels it wants to use to do its job, which is an opportunity in itself. But if we're covering a lot on impact and measurements and ROI already, which is brilliant. Is there any other anything before we start to flip it and look at a bit more through a human lens and people change? Is there anything else from a ROI impact that anybody wants to cover off in relation to how AI is going to change how we measure?
I think we'd probably be remiss not to talk about GEO or LLM optimization. Just maybe as a footnote, which is, I don't know, in my opinion, I think, like whatever you want to call it, AEO, GEO, like LLMO, there's loads of different, basically, how do you rank more highly in AI search results? PR it's one of the best, I think, the best arguments for thought leadership that I've seen in a decade. If you look at the way that these large language models are ranking information sources, they're basically looking for third-party verification that you are actually as credible as you say you are. And if you look at quite literally the sources they use, it's pretty much Wikipedia, government websites, and then media outlets. And then underneath that, you've got the stuff that's far less trustworthy. And I think as competition hots up for LLM search and search visibility in AI search, it will trend towards they will become more and more discerning. And so they will, like we do, will say, okay, actually, yeah, is this how well known or well trusted is this outlet? And they'll begin to be able to even do things like look for, is this a paid thought leadership article or not a paid thought leadership article? At the moment, it's not very good at doing that, but it will get better because it will have to, because of the way that the AI search works. It wants to give you the best answer in one shot. And so PR will just become more and more valuable, and getting into top tier publications will become more valuable for companies if they want to show up in AI search results. And the great thing about AI search results is it's super trackable, so you can see how you're ranking versus your competitors, but then you can also see where the traffic comes from too. So you can see, okay, this article got us placed ranked here in this query, and this person landed on our site from this query, and they went down our sales funnel, which means you can attribute to sales in a way that you've not been able to before. So that's just yeah.
Yeah, I think just in addition to that, I think obviously that's sort of the brilliant point, right? But in addition to that as well is I think what one of the trends that was in, I think it was the CEO of the Atlantic saying just because of the level of misinformation, and I hope I didn't quote that wrong because that in itself would be misinformation. But just in terms of the level of misinformation that we're seeing now, I think Google might be trying to rank more trusted sources. So is this a trusted source? And then we'll be able to essentially separate wheat from chaff, right? So how do we know that, for instance, Guardian, The Atlantic, or BBC, whatever, will probably be listed as trusted sources, which then adds to the point. So, for instance, regular blogs or some other sites that might, or other sketchier sites, might not be ranked as one of those trusted sources, basically. And maybe AI doesn't pull from some of those sources as much. So it just means maybe there is even a bigger chance again for PR to sort of leverage those media organizations or publications that we pitch to so a day-to-day basis, really. And then we're able to prove that, as you said, Tom, based on the easily trackable ways that these AI tools work, right? So I think that's also what one of those things as well.
Actually heading to the golden age of PR, so we're going to be able to justify every piece of coverage, and it's going to what we've wanted for years in terms of demonstrating quality over quantity in terms of coverage. Maybe it's actually coming. That's super interesting on the measurement side of things. I'm conscious we're going to dig into what this all means for people too, and I want to make sure we've got some time for that. So. What does this all mean? As I said on at the start, relationship, we've talked on it in here too, relationship building, creativity, they're incredibly important parts of the day-to-day role. But how does that change in a world where AI starts to become intertwined and much more part of our day-to-day role? Erica, from your perspective, how are you seeing that change?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really easy to get lost in this idea of how AI is going to replace the nature of our jobs. And certainly some parts will be replaced. But I'm reminded of the quote in a Gartner report from a CEO that said, AI won't replace you, but someone who knows how to use AI better than you will. And I think that understanding, becoming fluent and native in the use of AI is going to be a requisite for future success and where the industry is moving to a certain extent. But it will not replace skills like the creativity, like the strategic, like the relationships that sit as part of that role. And I think, again, like I said, human in the loop has to be core to the work that we do and to the consultancy that we offer internally, the agencies offers to their clients. And equally, like we need to, there was another term I heard recently of like the work slop, which is do we lean on, if you lean on AI too much, you're spending more of your time trying to clean up the mistakes of the hallucinations as well. And so I think we have to ride this continuous balance of where can we effectively use the AI and these tools, and then how do we understand how it's being utilized, understand the outputs that we're getting, so that we're still protecting the quality of the work at the same time.
From your perspective on that one, Harriet, in terms of trying to skill people up, get that balance right. How are you seeing that at a time where we've got agencies talking about being able to have boundless capacity with AI? How does that change the skill set?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of hype around AI, but it's really about bringing it back down to the grounded nature of what can it really help with. So it's sort of I put the human at the center of every training I do to empower the people in the process. So I think that a lot of people come to it with a lot of fear and skepticism. I see a lot of that, and then the move towards kind of inspiration and excitement and energy about using AI. So in terms of, I have a sort of traffic light system if people don't have any kind of policies in place, because actually some people have some very generic kind of AI policies, but the fact is they're going to need constantly updating. And actually, I feel like we haven't got the guardrails and the policies in place to really manage AI effectively in the industry at the moment. Everyone's still trying to catch up. So it's sort of like, using it, the green, amber, and red method for how you use AI in your work is a good starting point. And also, I've built a GPT for how creating an AI policy for organisations, which I pass on to clients, so that helps them get a start in that. But I think we're just finding our feet, aren't we?
From your perspective on that, Mofe too, is it in terms of skills development and how you're seeing that evolve within your agency or more broadly? Is it changing, or is it baby steps at the moment?
I think it's quite similar to what we've all talked about really. I think from our perspective, at the Hoffman, they've recently developed a new tool called GEDI. And that's currently being rolled out. It sort of like merges a lot of the AI functions and essentially puts that into one. And that's a tool that's currently being worked on or continuously rather. So it's a thing where we're having to send our feedback, and that's something that is sort of ongoing. Obviously, being a tech agency, having tech at the forefront is sort of like one of the things that we're looking at as well. I was listening to, I think, someone on LinkedIn on how they're hiring currently, and it's sort of around three things in like in terms of AI. It's sort of around AI fluency, AI agency, and growth mindset. So AI fluency basically how well do you know how to use the tools, and how so almost like a language, right? So like you speak English, I do speak AI, right? Um, but also in terms of AI agency, like how confident are you able to, I don't know, like to um, use certain tools on your own, but also make adjustments based on what you're working essentially has to do with how good you are basically, and sort of like the growth mindset. Because I believe where we're going, it might be where using AI is just table stakes. Like, well, it's just be like knowing how to use Microsoft or Word. Like everyone uses ChatGPT and all of that, but it just depends on how you use it and how you're able to use it. There have been recent um, researchers into you give AI to the most to the highest performing person and give AI to the least performing person, and how are those people able to use AI to benefits. There have been different results. One study says, oh, the least performing does like very well, and they have the same results as the highest performing, and another result says essentially it's just the same. Right, but I think these are sort of like the conversations that we're going to be having, essentially in terms of AI, like how are you able to use that, not just the fluency of it, but the agency, basically, like how much control are you able to have using these tools as well. But also some of the things that we mentioned as well in terms of like the relationship. We know that if there's too much in the way of technological advancements, people will probably want to do something more human. So that, as Harriet said, basically, yeah, that's relationship sort of like be a key one for us as well. And I think one of the things as well is we touched on AI basically over dependence on AI, and I think one of the skills that will be necessary going forward is basically like learning how to learn or learning how to think, or maybe learning how to use AI to think or learn. Basically, because even with colleges or universities, one of the things that is happening is people just put in their thesis and say, "Oh, can you just write this for me," or whatever it is. So I feel a lot of people might be outsourcing their work to AI. But one of the things that it will happen maybe if we're having like brainstorms, it might be evidence basically on how we're able to think without AI, right? So I think one of the things that we might start to see is people sort of putting an emphasis on being able to think independently of AI, but obviously that's also like a key thing as well, being able to think with AI. So yeah, those are some of the things that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting what you're saying, both about, the skills of the future and the entry level role as well. I know we've touched on that a teeny bit already, but yeah, what are people's thoughts on that in terms of the roles of the future? What, we hear about sort of communications engineers, that type of roles being talked about. Is there going to be emerging in the future? And also, how do you, if people need to have a certain degree of knowledge to then be able to work with AI to know what good looks like, how does one supercharge that? Tom, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think if I talk about what we've seen, I think I think I wrote a post about this not very long ago. There's this kind of emergence of a communications architect where you have typically like really senior people that are in charge of an entire like PR ecosystem inside often large companies that are working with almost every single department, oftentimes like working with a CFO or a CIO to like, how can we do this in the most efficient way possible, and even use like in-house dev teams in order to like knit together a custom solution for that. And that's kind of where this like principle for operating comes from, or your principles for communicating comes from. And then they're working often with like in-house teams or with external like software providers to work out, okay, like quite literally, what does the execution architecture look like for this? Now, I would argue you don't really need it technical person to be able to do that, as long as you have a team of developers who understand product, working alongside them, because really that's just about understanding what the requirements are for an internal system for communications. So that, if you have a really good product team, they'll go through the user journey with you and they'll walk step by step. And that's very much how we've created our product, right? So it's like, okay, how do we simplify this specific process for, doing, I don't know, the approval process between an agency and their client, right? Now we overcame that by creating a shared inbox so that the clients that we work with can just see exactly what's going on inside the inbox, and it makes everything a lot faster. There's nothing AI about that at all, though. That's just absolute transparency over exactly what you're doing, and a magic link so that you can share any email that's going to a journalist with your client, and they can jump in and review it directly and then approve it and send it. That process takes sometimes 24 or 48 hours of approval but there's nothing AI about that at all. And so I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that can already be put in. But I think to Harriet's point, it's understanding, what should AI actually do and what should humans do? And yes, you might have this kind of like communications architecture, but within that, it's then assessing, okay, where do we want to have human touch points in here? And where are we happy AI actually doing these things? And how does the AI develop, or how do you deliberately design in trust into the process of using AI? Because, for example, we have automatic chasers that get generated, and we'll say, do you want to create a chaser to follow up this email? Now, the AI will draft the chaser based on what that journalist responds to the most, and what the data shows they respond to the most or follow up with the most, right? But it's going to send us every single time. It cannot send an email without checking with the person first and said, no, you asked me to write this chaser. Here's what I'm going to write. Are you happy for me to send it? Now, 50 times you're going to click, yes, I'm happy for you to send it. And on the 50th time, you might want to click, actually, I don't need to review what you're going to write anymore. You've got it right I've had no changes for the last 50 times. I'm happy for you to send like the, short, chaser without my approval. And that's just a trust building exercise between you and the machine. And you get to a point where actually, it's beginning to do many, many more things autonomously than it previously did, much in the same way that you train a junior. And I think when that happens, that's when, you begin to think, okay, what should humans in my team do? And that's when you get to focus on the really interesting stuff like, behavioral analysis or business analysis, or you go really, really deep on your customer ICP, your target personas and profiles, so that you can then, build again, like more intelligence, more human intelligence into like all of the little layers that you've built alongside agentic execution.
Really interesting. I'm very conscious of time, but I just wanted to, as we started to talk about it from an in-house perspective a little bit too, I'd just love to get your perspective on that one too, Erica, in terms of the role of the future, skills-wise, and how that might evolve as well through your lens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to some of the things that Tom describes when we think about the role. So if I think about the first role that I had in comms, 20 plus years ago, I was flipping through newspapers, clipping articles in the morning, doing a single data point by data point analysis of our media coverage. For example, nobody in PR today does that as part of their entry level role. And so I think that we can, and I do lament some of the things that people will lose in their entry level roles, but it's always been evolving, and I think it will continue to always evolve. I think, taking a press release as an example, if your AI is creating the first draft of your press release, it's hard for you to then review that press release unless you have that experience to know what good looks like. And so there's still going to have to be some intent around nurturing the talented early in career to build up the skills to be critical of the AI. So a skill the entry level is going to need is definitely prompting. So how do you build the right prompting to get the most out of those tools? But then also, the old-fashioned pieces of, content reviews and what does good look like? Building, how do you do a media call? All of those things. I think they're still going to exist at the entry level. Just the weighting of it, I think, is going to evolve. So I don't have the answers because I think it's going to change in ways that we don't even know in 10 years' time. But what I think is really important today is that we don't take the efficiency of AI and use it as a way to losing sight of investment into future talent. We have to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be way harder to have that succession planning in the future.
Makes complete sense. Right. I'm going woefully off time here. I'll give a warning for anybody that wants to ask any further questions. I will have a look at those in a second, but just pop them in, and we'll finish with a quick, keep these brief, guys. Finish the sentence of in the next 3 years, AI will, and I will start with you, Harriet.
In the next 3 years, AI will make trust and human relationships priceless.
Nice. Mofe?
Sorry, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with predictions. But yeah,
Sorry.
because I don't think we really know how to do it very well. Human beings, that is. But in the next 3 years, I think more of we will get to a place where we will sort of to demand a lot more sort of checking of sources, but also regulation. Because just going back to Harriet's piece, basically on someone AI basically writing with someone's name and stuff. So we sort of like need to ask more on what are the guardrails, basically.
Love it. Erica?
I'm going to say in a few years, in the next 3 years, AI will be a natural part of a work process that we probably wouldn't even recognize today.
Love it. And Tom?
I think in 3 years' time,
Mhm.
I think AI will turn companies into comms departments. I think about 95% of all communications tasks will either be assisted or dominantly done by AI, with the human right at the end of the process.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, that's quite the way to finish. One or two questions coming in. Thank you. I think you've already answered one of them, Harriet. Very efficient.
Journalist in me.
And then Tom, we've had one question come in, particularly around AI tools for what you were talking to, effectively pulling coverage reports. Any recommendations or any advice you can share there?
I don't, I'm afraid. I know there are tools that you can use for like coverage reporting. We have it in our threads in our inbox, so you can literally just go and have something once you've like finished having the conversation with the journalists decide to publish something. We can just have a check. We literally have a check for coverage button that exists inside your inbox, and then it will just go and it will look for, because you have all of the context of what's been shared and the information, you already know what like literally has been sent. So we just have a searcher. You could just use probably deep research for this, I would imagine.
Brilliant. And then one more, and this is actually quite an interesting question around should I be guilty about using AI? We've talked about transparency and guardrails not being in place in policies, and I think this is evolving. But how does everyone feel about that?
Strong now.
Okay.
I think it's a great question, and I will say it's a question that I heard members of my team asking, 6, 7 months ago, even. It's incredible how quickly the progress has changed on this as these tools become more and more ubiquitous. You should never feel guilty about using the tools. What you should feel guilty of is if you're not applying your own layer of analysis and if you're always presenting it as your own work. Transparency, human in the loop. I know I sound like a broken record, but I think those are the keys. But using shortcuts, being more efficient in the way that we work, again, it's something we've always done. And this is just a new way to do that. So.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
actually, I would go back to saying what people have said already about the mindset shift into kind of a growth mindset. AI is here; it's not going anywhere. You have to get on board. So it's finding a way to make AI work for you to enhance to use it in a way that you feel comfortable with. But you have to look at it from how can it actually improve I mean, I love using AI. I find it fascinating and really rewarding. But it is that, and because it can do these phenomenal things that people don't necessarily realize, and it's the light bulb moments. So actually, when you see people move from that like fear and skepticism to kind of excitement and actually inspiration, that's when I feel like they overcome that is AI cheating, because it is cheating if you just say write this article for me and then send, and then that's not the way to use AI. But a lot of people think of it as a text generation machine, but that's not its best use case.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say as well. I think an interesting question is, how would you feel if your boss took credit for your ideas? That's sort of like an interesting way to look at the conversations. So basically, if you do use AI, you can obviously just say, yeah, like I've done this with AI, and I think in some of like the ways that we've talked about as well, not just outsourcing your work to AI, but like doing it collaboratively, and making sure that you're still involved and you're still using your critical thinking. So it's not just you like passing on AI's work for as yours or anything like that. It's still having a level of involvement basically that has to do with checking, and even going back to the was it McKinsey, or who was had to return to
Deloitte. Yeah.
yeah, Deloitte, right. So if someone had said, okay, how do we cross check this to make sure that this is accurate, because it's basically due to hallucinations, right? So yeah, it's just okay, if this hallucinates, then how do we check to make sure, okay, these things are actually right and all of that. So yeah, no one should be ashamed to use AI. I mean, we all kind of do anyway, so use AI. I mean,
Brilliant. Yeah, I think you're completely right, Mofe. There's long way to go, but it feels like we're heading in the right direction. Right, I will call it there. So I'm conscious of time. Well, thank you so much to the brilliant panel we've had today. I think it's offered up some great insights and perspectives on both in terms of the impact that PR offers, but also how do we make sure we take humans on the journey. As a reminder, we'll do a recording of this will go on to YouTube, and then we'll do a write-up of the event too, so you'll have it for reference. And I think that's it. So thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Hope you found it interesting, and speak to you all soon. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.